Hey, what's going on, y'all? Shawn, Back to Basics Fitness with Shawn here. I've been feeling really kind of heavy about, really about this all kind of stuff with life. But like, I've been thinking a lot about, you know, health and fitness of people. This is something that I've thought about a lot for really, to be honest, probably at least 20 years. Seeing other people around me enjoying life and enjoying, good quality of health because of this. And I sometimes will talk about why I got into health and fitness. Part of it was, yeah, I wanted to get muscular, be athletic and all that kind of stuff, have a good looking body and different things like that. It's probably some of my earlier motivations. And then I also developed a love for fitness whenever I was like, um, you know, even in elementary school to some degree. That's where it started because my dad would have me and my brothers exercising with him from time to time, and I would see his muscles and all this kind of stuff, and it was motivational to me. But the thing that really, really gets me in regard to this health and fitness stuff is I just want to see people living better. And I get really, really tired of seeing regular people who are so capable of enjoying a healthy life, a healthy body, but they don't know it. They don't know it. You know, feeling like this stuff is beyond their reach, feeling like they have to struggle to enjoy a semblance of well-being, and it's just not true. And I've had the advantage of growing up certain kind of ways that help me to understand that, but I realize that a lot of people don't understand that. So let me just kind of cut to the chase. In this live, I kind of want to talk about how to stay healthy after 30. So I just recently entered my 40s, and so this subtopic of staying healthy after a certain age, which is kind of considered middle age, let's just be real, it's become near and dear to my heart. Because this is the age, let's just be honest, this is around that time where we kind of like start to believe that it's really going downhill now. You know, that when you were in your, especially maybe your 20s, you were at your peak. And then once you got to your 30s, you kind of started to go in that downward curve down. And then once you're in your 40s, hey, it's going downhill. Well, first of all, I'm here to tell you that's not true. It's only true unless you believe it. Um, but I see so many people who are like, man, I have these aches and pains. I take all this medicine, or I'm trying to lose weight. I can't lose weight. I have these cravings that I can't control, and then also believe in stuff like that being healthy is for young people. And then also that it's just kind of like a luck of the draw that you just kind of get if you just kind of like have the right kind of genetics or something like that. If you're lucky to have good genetics. And it's just not true. It's just not true. And so I'm always trying to debunk these different kind of things. Look, I've known lots of people close to me who have suffered and even in some cases died for a lack of knowledge. We're all familiar with that passage in if you are a believer like I am, read the Bible, you're very likely already familiar with that passage in the book of Habakkuk. Um, where it says, "My people perish for a lack of knowledge." That's part of what the scripture says. Um, and we're familiar with that. And if you really internalize that, that's very true. Uh, period. In just life in general, when you don't know about something, then that can cause you to really miss out and even to unnecessarily suffer. It's like, for example, I remember when I was growing up, my dad was talking about how the way that he learned about investing was sorry about that. The way that my dad learned about investing was when he overheard some of his coworkers kind of like talking about different kinds of things, stuff that he didn't grow up learning about. It just wasn't talked about for him growing up. And so he learned about it later on in his life. And so what he did with my brothers and I is he would tell us about it in hopes that we catch on a little earlier and be able to kind of take more advantage of investing. And time is very important with investing. The earlier the better, all that kind of stuff. There are healthy living principles that will enable you to live, not just feel okay, but to live disease free, to have a very vibrant, very active life. Well, not just in your young years, like your teens and 20s, not just in middle age, but well into your elderly years. I recently saw Dick Van Dyke celebrated 100 years old like within the past few weeks. And Dick Van Dyke is known for sound what's the no Mary Poppins and TV show he had, and he's always just singing, dancing guy, and he still even does that. I mean, he's slowed down. I mean, which is expected at 100, but the dude is still vibrant. He's in his right mind. He's able to move around and stuff like that. But unfortunately, that is kind of the exception and not the rule. But I think it's because we think that it's supposed to be this way. So I don't know. This is one of the things that really kind of like is very it's a very, like I say, near and dear topic to me. But let's talk about how to stay healthy after 30 years old. So the first thing that we need to understand is that health is not a by chance thing. Being healthy is not something that just happens um because you got a good hand of cards. It's not That's not the way it works. Now, some people, I mean, genetics can have a small part to play, but more than that is what we learn in the environment that we come up in. So let me explain that. A lot of times it's not like the genetics that harm us. It is the habits and things that we learn. In church, a lot of times we refer to them as generational curses and whatnot. Um, a lot of times what it is a pattern of thinking that destroys our health. Where you have all these generations of people who have diabetes, for example, or insert whatever the disease is. My dad had diabetes, and then my grandfather had diabetes, and I got pre-diabetes now, and it just kind of goes on and on and on and on, and we kind of think that it's just my genetics are bad. But if you ever look up, like, do a search even today and see how much of disease is attributable to genetics. And if I'm not mistaken, it's I think it's 10% or less, which means the other 90 plus percent is attributable to what they call epigenetics, which is how our genetics are influenced by our environment. One thing I like to talk about a lot because it's so just fascinating to me is the fact that our bodies are just very, very responsive um, things. Our bodies are constantly responding to the world on the outside of us. You know, whether it be the temperature or the time of day, or your thoughts or your food, or anything that you can kind of take in, anything that you can sense. Our bodies are sensitive to inactivity or activity. Our bodies are constantly adjusting. Our bodies are listening to everything that we do constantly. Okay. And so what happens is our bodies respond to they respond way more to what happens to them, what they kind of take in, than something that's inside of your genetics. So that's the first thing to really understand. If that's the case, then that means that there's a whole heck of a lot of, you know, disease and stuff like that that we end up unnecessarily dealing with. And the reason why I say unnecessarily is because it has to do with things that we can control. So that's the first thing. It's like disease is not just something, it's not just simply something that, well, I'm just kind of born with it, it kind of runs in my family. No, no, that is a very, very small percentage. Much of it is associated with what we can control, which brings me to my second point, which is this: our bodies have fundamental needs. This is what I say. One of the things I say the most for sure. Sounds simple, sounds basic, sounds, like, duh, of course that's true. But we live like we don't know that. Our bodies have fundamental needs for them to work properly. I'm not even talking about like going to the gym and, drinking wheatgrass juice and, all, green tea and all this kind of extra stuff. I'm not talking about extra stuff. I'm talking about like the very basics. You have a living body means that that body, for it to continue to live and to be vibrant, has to have certain things. And the reason why a lot of us are dealing with issues is because we're not meeting our basic needs. Our basic needs. Again, I'm not talking about the stuff that you see people doing on Instagram. I'm not talking about superfoods and Peloton and all this kind of, flashy stuff. I'm talking about the very basics. The cells of your body need nutrients. They need, vitamin A, vitamin D, the B vitamins, various minerals, water, all this kind of stuff, like to run like on a baseline correct level. A lot of times when disease shows up, it's not really chance. It's because your body has been going on and on for a long time, not getting something that it needs, trying to compensate, but it that ends up affecting it negatively at some point. Dis-ease, a lack of ease. If you go long enough in your car with low oil in your engine, then that very much increases the likelihood that your engine is going to lock up. If you have bad belts or something like that, that's going to cause something to mess up eventually. If you have bad alignment, then it's going to cause your car to the tires to wear out unevenly, and eventually could result in like a blown tire, a flat tire, something like that. This is what happens over time. And we can understand that with vehicles, but then we don't really understand that that's the same way it is with our bodies. A lot of times, with the way that we live, we just be out here. We just be out here just doing stuff. And then we're like surprised by, some sort of deficiency or ailment that we were moving in the direction of the whole time. Okay. So your body has basic needs. If you're not meeting those needs, then your body is moving toward disease. This isn't about blaming or anything. This is about enlightenment. This is really in being enlightened and empowered to understand that to become healthy, you don't have to do all the stuff you see on Instagram or TikTok or whatever. You don't have to even do any of that. Well, almost any of it. Now, I'm a personal trainer. I have a fitness channel. I like going to the gym myself and all this kind of stuff. So I'm all about exercise. I'm all about drinking green tea and all the stuff that might be seen as extra. But I'll be the first to tell you, you need to drill in with those basic things. Okay, so what are the basics? So first of all, and I'm not going to say this in any order. Maybe that'd be for another time. But what are you ingesting? If you are ingesting fast food every day, that is a big red flag. Even if even if it's a few times a week, and I get it. Sometimes with me, especially if we're kind of on the road a bit, kind of like buying a lot of food out and stuff like that, and then I get to the point like, y'all, family, we got to pull back, man. This ain't it. So sometimes life is such that you're moving around a lot and you might buy a lot of fast food or whatever. But what I'm telling you is if you're eating fast food every day or even a few times a week, some would even say once a week, that's not it. Not only are you probably experiencing nutrient deficiencies, but you're also putting a lot of stuff in your body that your body can't use. A lot of stuff that in your body is harmful. So what are you ingesting? Are you ingesting foods that will meet your needs? That'd be a diet that's really, and I'm just going to be basic here. Really, if you're ingesting a diet that is 80+% whole food, you're in a good place. All whole food is food that is as close to its natural state as possible. Produce, that's cooked lightly or whatever. It's not like the packaged stuff like chips and cookies and just various snacks. Even if people have put advertisements on those snacks, it's like, hey, this has vitamin C in it. This has vitamin uh whatever. Even with that kind of stuff, no, because those aren't whole foods. That's something that somebody made somewhere. And they kind of got a lot of derivatives and put them together into something. And you can't survive off of that stuff. You're gonna have all kind of like gaps in what your body needs. So your diet has to be largely real food. Are you moving? I'm not even talking about exercise. I'm talking about, is most of your day sitting down? Like, do you get up from bed, then go drive to work? So you're sitting down in your car and then walk for maybe 2 minutes to get to your office, and then you sit there for all day. Then you get up and go sit back in your car, only to go home and then sit down in front of the couch and then just sit down um, in front of the TV until it's time to go to bed, and then you lay back down. Largely no movement. That's not how we're designed. Just because it's our lifestyle doesn't mean that that's like somehow okay. It's harmful. It's harmful to us to not move like that. Unless you are somebody who works in like maybe construction or you're an athlete or whatever, very likely your life is very sedentary. Now, people who tend to live in cities, that's one of the advantages they have over people like us who, may live in more like rural areas, not or closer to rural where stuff is more spread out, or you use cars and stuff like that because they're walking around a lot in cities. So that's one of the advantages they have. Now they may have to deal with pollution too, which is another thing. But if you're having to walk everywhere, that actually is a plus for you. But just because it's the American lifestyle doesn't mean that somehow you're exempt from the harmful effects of it. And we have to understand that there's a lot of stuff, a lot of the ways that we live here in America, very unhealthy, very unhealthy. It's just we're used to it. And so we don't think much about it. But how much are you moving? You're designed to move a lot every day. You figure if you don't move a whole lot for many years, I mean, there's numerous negative effects to health from that. But also just think about it. Why would your body even be inclined to be vibrant if you ain't doing nothing with it? You see what I'm saying? How much sleep are you getting? Are you getting now? I probably average about somewhere between 6 and 7 hours of sleep. I would like to average more like 7 to 8. And Lord help me, that's what I'm working on. But it's a lot of people who are getting like maybe 4 to 5 hours a night. And I mean, I think there are some anomalies out there. Some people who are kind of like, you know, um, they kind of don't tend to need as much sleep. But then I think there's some people who think they don't need as much sleep and they really do. And you need sleep. Sleep is one of those things. If you go without, if you went like with zero sleep for like, I think it's 3 or 4 days, you die. How much water are you drinking? I'm not talking about juice. Of course, I'm not talking about soda, energy drinks. I'm not talking about liquid. I'm talking about water. It's water that our bodies actually need. And while you can extract liquid out of some of those other things, you're getting other stuff that you don't really need a lot of that's causing issues in your body. So, how much water do you drink? Now, I'm not one that will say that you have to drink like, um, you know, what is it? They say eight, they say, was it 10 8 ounce glasses of water a day or something like that, or half of your body weight in ounces. So for me, that'd be anywhere from how many ounces of water? So 80 ounces to 80 to 90 ounces of water a day. Now I don't drink that much. But the thing is, it also kind of depends on like your what kind of food you eat because there's liquids in the foods that you eat as well. So you have to be mindful of that. But like a lot of us probably don't drink any water at all, and we say stuff like water is nasty and everything. No, man, we got to get over that. We got to get over that. You need water. So, how much water are you drinking? How much whole food do you eat? How much movement are you kind of like doing? How often are you going outside? Do you go outside at all? One thing I like to tell people is that we we may not be walking around like these deer and the various animals that are out here. We may not be just out there naked like they are, but I mean, we are as much of a we come as much from the earth, so to speak, as they do. Like we're made of the same stuff. We're made of the same stuff, and so like we're again, just because we're used to being indoors doesn't mean that that's somehow okay for us, that it exempts us from the negative health effects of being indoors all the time. Like the synthesis of vitamin D and perhaps other photonutrients, just by virtue of being exposed to the sun. Fresh air that doesn't have like lint and the stuff from paint and the various chemicals that are used to kind of create your home. Um, are you paying attention to these things? And so that this is not too long, because this is I can really talk about how to stay healthy after 30 a lot. The last thing I want to talk about is what do you believe, man? What do you believe? What do you believe? If you were like somebody who was in high school, like you were a big athlete, you played a lot of sports and whatnot, and now you don't, the thing I want to ask you is like, what's really different between now and your high school years? Now, most people are like me. You have a family of some kind. When you have family and you have work and everything, you're not gonna have time to play sports a whole lot. You're just not. And so I'm not gonna even try to act like I don't understand that. However, if you want to be healthy after 30, you got to understand you have to move. You have to eat largely healthy food. And if you believe that a lot of this is more so associated with your age, plain and simple, you're wrong. I say that with all respect, you know, you know, and understanding that how we learn. But if you believe that your health is supposed to deteriorate as you age, you're wrong about that. You're wrong. And the only way that happens is if that is what you believe. And you don't even have to go far these days because of the internet to see how many people are into their 40s, their 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. and beyond even, who are like strong, right mind, not walking around in pain, still able to do everything that they've always done. Because the body is incredible. It's really incredible. It's just that if you abuse your body for a long period of time, it's going to catch up. It's going to catch up. But what do you believe about that? What do you believe about that? If you believe that after 30 it's done, then it's going to be done for you. Just like the Bible says, as thou hast believed, so be it done unto you. If you believe it, here you go. That's the way it works. But if you actually believe that you can be fit, trim, toned, I don't care what you've been through, healthy without aches and pains and disease and stuff like that. If you can grab onto that, then you can have it. The thing that I realized with me is I had an advantage of having different kind of things put into my mind at a young age because of the way my parents raised me. My dad having us exercising, my mom cooking a decent amount, showing me how to cook. My mom would have healthy living related literature in the home. My dad was always saying, you got to have at least one green vegetable. So all these things kind of collectively helped me to think the way that I think now. So I just thank God for my mom and dad instilling those things in my mind. I'll say this and I'll be done. I think that just some of the ridiculousness of this day and age, like what's been going on in the country and in the world, I think it just really further underscores the fact that we really need to be our main advocates for our own health. You know, the thing is, it's like health was never supposed to be something that was just dependent on the health of an individual was never supposed to be something that's dependent on somebody else, like a doctor, or physician, or something like that. Never. I'm not saying that a physician or a doctor doesn't help, but the point that I'm making is you as the individual with the body are responsible for your own health. You as the individual are responsible. Period. Now, that can involve, you know, medical advice and stuff like that for sure. But ground zero for your health is what are you doing with your body? What are you doing? What are you eating? How much are you moving? How much sleep are you getting? How much are you outside? How stressed are you? Are you able to do you know how to manage stress effectively so that stuff doesn't get the best of you? Like where you're learning to kind of to kind of deal with stuff in a healthy manner. Are you having times of rest where you kind of steal away? Do you have good social relationships and stuff like that? All of these things. And until we address those, we're gonna always kind of like have this situation where we deteriorate after a certain age, and then we never reach our fitness goals, we never reach our health goals, but it's only because we believe that this is the way it is when it's really not. Okay, now I'm just going to end it there. There's a lot I could talk about. I'm not scripted today, um, so I'm gonna kind of leave it there. But anyway, if you've watched this video after this live and you have any questions, anything that it makes you think about, please make sure you put it in the comments because I want to see what you guys are actually thinking about. Anyhow, remember your doctor's not responsible for your health. You are. If you can grab that, then you can be healthy after 30. Not just baseline. You can be vibrant. You can be more, you know, more have more vigor now than you did when you were 20. If you can believe that. All right, that's enough. I hope y'all have a great day.